Who at middleweight is beating Khamzat Chimaev? Khamzat Chimaev is coming off the most dominant championship performance we have ever seen. I don't know if anybody at middleweight is beating him. And matter of fact, he could move up and down a weight class. I don't know if anybody's beating him. Let's take a look at the middleweight rankings and start there. At the end, I'll talk about what happens if he moves up a weight class, how he fares there, and then what happens if he goes down to 170. Let's start off with a fight to kind of remind people of what exactly happened at UFC 319. Dricus du Plessis, the number one contender, mauled 5 straight rounds, 37 minutes of control, stood no chance at all, and looked like a bad fighter. Dricus, who had a very good championship reign, looked like a bad mixed martial artist in that fight against Chimaev. Next, Nasruddin Imavov. No chance. He has no chance. Nasruddin Imavov he's a good counter striker and he has some good boxing. The reality of the situation is, if he were to fight Khamzat Chimaev, he would have to just pray something big lands early. Kind of just like Dricus. Imavov versus Khamzat could look a lot like Dricus versus Khamzat, but Nasruddin just is a little more technically sound on the ground. I see 25 minutes of domination, or Nasruddin does what Dricus would not do. He takes a chance and tries to make something happen on the ground. Khamzat makes him pay. He gets his neck or just grounds him out. Nasruddin Imavov, no. Next up, Sean Strickland. Do you know what Chimaev would do to Sean Strickland? Just think about it for a second. Sean Strickland would get mauled so unbelievably fast. And I've seen the tweets Sean Strickland has put out saying he has the wrestling to beat Chimaev. Stop. Bro, stop. Come on. Sean Strickland may end up in the fastest crucifix we've ever seen in the UFC if he were to fight Khamzat Chimaev. 3 seconds into the fight, Chimaev is jumping across the octagon and tackling him. Simple as that. Nothing Sean Strickland has shown me says he could hang in there with Chimaev at all. If you're out there and you think this is a close fight, we got real problems. It's not. Next up, Israel Adesanya. Do you know Israel Adesanya? Let's just take a minute and think. What would happen if Israel Adesanya and Khamzat Chimaev fought today? What do we think would happen? Just imagine it in your head. Here, I got you. Israel Adesanya would look like Kevin Holland in a fight against Chimaev if they fought today. He would look like Kevin Holland. It may even be worse than that. Immediate takedown on the ground, gives up his neck, the fight's over. Over under 90 seconds would be the line for how long that fight lasts. I'm not going to rag on Izzy too much, but please don't think that's any type of fight at all. Izzy knows that. We know that. Next up, let's get in some guys who may actually have a chance. We'll start with Baralho. So Baralho's fighting Imavov in September. And look, regardless of whether or not I think Baralho can beat Chimaev, one thing I'm pretty confident in is the fact that the fighting nerds in that gym, they're going to come in with some kind of game plan for the Chimaev fight. That much I know. Dricus, I don't know what his game plan was. I don't know if you saw the interviews with his manager or his coach, actually. This dude, the game plan against Chimaev cannot just be stand up. If your strategy is stand up against Khamzat Chimaev, you're going to lose. It is as simple as that. Back to Baralho. I think the fighting nerds will have a game plan for him, but I don't think he's technically sound enough. He's not at the same level as Chimaev. Chimaev is a whole nother world of grappler, and I think like the niche or a popular thing would be to say, well, Baralho and the fighting nerds, man, they're good jiu-jitsu, and all that's nonsense to me. I don't even think Baralho is going to beat Imavov, so I'm certainly not picking him to beat Khamzat Chimaev. Next, let's go to 2 middleweight guys that are the most popular answers when you say, who can beat Khamzat Chimaev? We'll start with Anthony Hernandez. So Fluffy. Again, I think this is going to be the most popular answer when you ask people who can beat Khamzat Chimaev. But if I'm going to be honest, I don't really see a path to victory. I think Khamzat, this is what I think will be the overwhelming reality of that fight. I think Khamzat Chimaev is going to be too physical for Anthony Hernandez. Anthony Hernandez kind of has the same bully factor that Khamzat likes to do. We just watched Hernandez bully Roman Dolidze and make him look awful. He looked awful. But the issue is you're not going to be able to do that to Khamzat. And I think to have a real shot against Khamzat Chimaev, you have to present a real danger from your guard and off your back. There's a chance Anthony Hernandez has that level of jiu-jitsu and can do that, but I don't see it. I don't see him having the same kind of guard play as Gilbert Burns and as a Kamaru Usman, who gave Khamzat real issues. The only way I see Hernandez finding success is if he can make Chimaev work. That's what he would have to do. Dricus didn't make Chimaev work at all. We sat there and watched Dricus sit in a turtle position to where Khamzat could just recharge and catch his breath every single time he was on the ground. That's going to be the kind of fight you're dealing with when you're in there with Chimaev. I think Fluffy may be able to make Chimaev work really hard. And Fluffy's shown that he has great cardio. That's his biggest advantage by far. If he can make Chimaev work, maybe he could take over in the later rounds. But even then, I still don't see it. Like, I'm trying to imagine it in my head. I don't see how Fluffy makes Khamzat uncomfortable in any way. I think he'll be too physical. Give me Chimaev again. Next, RDR, so Rainer de Ridder. This one, in my opinion, at the middleweight division, is the most interesting when it comes to matchups against Khamzat Chimaev. So Rainer de Ridder, the first thing that comes to mind when I'm thinking of Chimaev versus RDR is RDR will have some sort of danger to present from his guard, which again, I said this earlier, I think that's what you need if you want to have a legit chance to beat Khamzat Chimaev. And kind of the opposite of the Hernandez fight, I think RDR will be able to handle the physicality of Chimaev. RDR is a big dude, he cuts a lot of weight, that's kind of well known. So that's where I think he could have success. But my concern with RDR is kind of the flip side. Say this fight is on the feet. Now, RDR has really good body work. I don't see a world where he's able to implement his body work without being taken to the ground by Chimaev. So if RDR can't use his body work, those knees to the body that he's really great at, I don't think his hands present enough danger for Khamzat. The reality of the situation is this. If this fight were to happen, I see it being kind of competitive, a little competitive early into the fight, and then eventually RDR will get a little tired. He gets sloppy, kind of in the same way Dricus does. I can see RDR being too comfortable off his back and just trying to throw stuff up, where Chimaev is going to know when and when not to be in and out. And I think it's going to get to a point where it's like RDR is trying to pull guard, kind of how you see a Paul Craig is losing a fight or Gerald Meerschaert's losing a fight. I think Chimaev makes RDR look like Paul Craig. Call me crazy. That's how I see this fight going. So again, do I think anybody at the 185-pound division is beating Khamzat Chimaev? No. Simple as that. No. But let's talk about what happens if Chimaev decides to move weight classes. Khamzat Chimaev, in an interview, mentioned being a triple champ and how he wanted to be number one pound for pound in the world. At first, I was like, man, this guy's crazy. Let's worry about Dricus. Seeing how he worried about Dricus and how he handled Dricus, this is a real possibility if the UFC allows it. Let's talk about 205, light heavyweight. So in this division, there's only two guys that we really need to talk about in this situation. Pereira is fighting Magomed Ankalaev in October. So if Chimaev was to move up, he would probably fight one of those two. We'll talk about Pereira first. Give me Khamzat. And I'll tell you this, Pereira versus Khamzat Chimaev might look exactly like Dricus versus Khamzat Chimaev. I don't know what would make any difference. Pereira is obviously bigger than Dricus, but Dricus is a big physical middleweight. Pereira versus Khamzat is going to shoot a takedown, and he's going to land the takedown against Pereira. Pereira has shown me nothing that says he could handle the wrestling and the grappling of Khamzat Chimaev. And I think Khamzat can deal with the physicality of all these 205ers. I just do. Obviously, he presents a little more of that one-shot power. But again, I don't think he's going to be taken down. There's not going to be the opportunity. Khamzat is going to smother him, and it's not going to matter. Now, the Ankalaev fight. This fight is more interesting than Pereira because obviously Ankalaev has shown he has some level of wrestling skill. He's got a little bit of a background, and he'll obviously be bigger than Chimaev. Again, my issue, I think Chimaev technically is going to outwork any of these light heavyweights. No heavier man is going to be anywhere near the skill level of Khamzat Chimaev. Simple as that. You can argue with a wall. That's not going to be the case. The question is whether or not I think Ankalaev will be too big for Khamzat to get a hold of and drag down to the ground. I don't see it being the case. I think Chimaev is ready for that level. I think Chimaev could move up right now and be the 205 champ against either one of these guys. Now, lastly, what happens if he goes down to 170? This is more interesting than the 205 move, in my opinion. It would be JDM or Islam. We'll start with JDM, and I'll be quick with this one. Khamzat easily beats JDM. Easily beats JDM. I know JDM looked pretty good against Bilal Muhammad, but hey, Khamzat's not Bilal Muhammad. Simple as that. If JDM were to beat Islam Makhachev, we could absolutely see Chimaev go down to 170 and become triple champ or become double champ. That's a real possibility. Now, the most interesting fight out of all the ones I've talked about so far. What if Islam wins at 170 and that's the fight Chimaev wants and that's the fight we get? When I'm imagining this fight in my head, obviously the skill level, that's the tightest gap that Chimaev will have faced to this point. Like skill for skill, Islam is as close to the same level or better, however you want to see it, to Chimaev as anybody else in the UFC. The issue I see for Islam here is the physicality of Chimaev. If the reports we've seen about Islam struggling to put on weight and get to 170 have any truth behind them at all, the matchup with Chimaev is going to be a real issue. Islam on the feet is much better than Chimaev, in my opinion. His boxing is way better. So can Islam nullify Chimaev's grappling? I think he can. I think if those two were to fight, Islam is going to be skilled enough to keep Khamzat off of him and make it a true striking match. And if that happens, I see Islam beating him. Simple as that. I see Islam beating Chimaev if they were to fight at 170. No, it must be mentioned, Chimaev can't even make 170. He gets hospitalized. But if it was to happen, Islam versus Chimaev, give me Islam, man. Skill for skill, he's there, if not better than Chimaev. His boxing is way better. He's going to keep Chimaev off of him, and it's going to be a striking match. Give me Islam in that scenario. That's all I've got. Like, comment, subscribe. Show some love. We're trying to grow this thing, man. Let's go.